High school football fans in the North Florida area, welcome to another edition of the Extra Point. Man, it's been a great week of football. I'm here with my tag team partner, Andrew Jupe. We're going to go ahead and jump into some very exciting scores from week number 7 in the rewind. Man, a few surprises from the Panhandle. I know you had a chance to definitely watch a couple of those games, or at least keep up with a few of those scores. I was, definitely had my eyes glued to a couple of those games, but man, I think all eyes were on Lincoln and Leon to kick things off. So I'm going to go ahead and jump into that one first. Lincoln handles business against the Lions, and it looked like business as usual. They kind of shut down some of the hype train, and they kind of handled Leon 42-0, a very resounding win for the Trojans. And I think it's one of those things where you definitely can appreciate what Leon has put together, but Lincoln just kind of put a lid on all of that noise and kind of went out and handled things, like business as usual.
Yeah, it was pretty wild, Mark, because it was one of the higher profile games, not only of this week, but of the season, especially here in the capital city. One of a number of games that have an undefeated team and a one loss or a couple one loss, but it was all Lincoln all the time. I think it's now 24 or 25 straight games that they've taken care of Leon. The defense was massive again, third shutout of the season. Of course, you talk about the monster games by the defensive line, especially. I think they had 7 sacks led by Chauncey Jordan and Bostic and those other guys on the defensive side. Absolutely mean. And then the running game got it done. The guys in the trenches up front took care of business on both sides, like we talked about defensively. And then they did the exact same thing offensively. Ja'Shawn Washington and a couple of rushing touchdowns, as well as Chris Sims. I think for a total of 4 team touchdowns. But it was an absolute domination here by Lincoln. And once again, kind of stamping the approval here. Still the one loss on the season, but undefeated in the state of Florida, Mark. And of course, they're keeping that reputation here in the Big Bend as they have the last, I want to say 5, 10. And then the more I go back, the more they're at the top of the conversation as one of the powers here in the Big Bend.
Yeah, Lincoln has. I think you have to put Lincoln and Madison County kind of in the same conversation in terms of just being able to dominate the competition here along I-10. Nobody's really compared over that long of a stretch. Going back and looking at that game, and really expected Leon to. I really wanted to see if they could establish a running game. They could not. They ran into that Stonewall Trojan defense, and it looked like Lincoln just from a standpoint from the trenches, they really dominated on both sides of the ball, protected the quarterback. Sims kept his jersey clean all night. And then on the defensive side, it was absolutely ugly. They were in Leon's backfield like they just belonged there, and just really gave the Lions fits. And I think for Leon, definitely can appreciate what they were able to do through the first 5, but definitely got to go back to the drawing board against one of their biggest rivals. But Lincoln takes this one 42-0, big dominating win by the Trojans. Moving on, the Godby Cougars hit the road and get a very good road win against Booker T. Washington, 43-6. And I think that's what Coach Jones was looking for, a good win to establish his team's identity. They've been kind of up and down all season, but I think this is kind of one of those things where you really want to see your team not quit in the middle of the year and really want to produce some fight out of them. And I think that's definitely, and Godby's not out of it by any stretch. I think the FHSAA had them ranked as number 11 in the state. So that's still a lot of good building blocks to build on. And this was one of them with a win over Booker T. Washington.
Yeah, absolutely. Really excited to see Godby second straight win, Mark, second straight game with 40-plus points. The offense kind of has a rebirth here. Lazarus Chambers, man, he's feeling the part, and he looks comfortable these last couple games. He's able to use his dual threat, and Godby's youthful core, Mark, may be the best kept secret here in the Big Bend, North Florida Panhandle. This team is stacked with freshmen and sophomores that can straight up ball. The sophomore wide receiver, Tylen Vickers, had a sweet one-handed touchdown catch. It was 104 that Chambers tossed versus Booker T. I think he had 5 total when you include the rushing yards, but Godby is rolling, and you start to see the traction, kind of the DeMario Jones era really taking fold, and cool to see things rocking and rolling on the west side over on Tharp Street, Mark. But Godby is hot right now. and they're rolling. It makes this a really interesting district going forward, which I know we have a lot of district games coming up here for them, Gadsden, Marietta, and Florida High. It's going to be a really interesting race here the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, absolutely. The whole suburban class two, class looks really, really loaded, and I think there's a ton of talent, and Gabi's definitely putting their stamp on things over on Tharp Street. So big win for the Cougars. Undefeated Walton handles business against Mariana 48-14. Walton looking like one of the teams to beat. I think, and I believe they're also in that very stacked 2S division, classification. And they definitely showed it last Friday with a big 48-14 win. Florida High hit the road taking on Carrollwood Day. Seminoles come out on the losing end of this one. A little bit of a shocker. I thought that the game would be a lot closer than it was, but Florida High gets handled by Carrollwood Day 37-7. Seminole offense just not able to get anything going, and really kind of a eyebrow raiser for me.
Yeah, and that's the thing. It's hard to tell, especially when you go on the road, Mark, and not only going a couple hours, but down into that Tampa area, you can be looking at a 5, potentially 6-hour trip, depending how the bus ride goes.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really tough to gauge, especially high school, about keeping fresh, keeping hydrated, and maybe they just have a baller Carrollwood Day team. Obviously, one of the teams out of our area, so it's tough to tell. But I'm looking for the Seminoles to bounce back. They have a really exciting one coming up this week, and we know they're going to be in the conversation when we talk about November. So potentially some good film for them to improve on, but I'm looking for a Seminole bounce back here in the next couple of weeks, Mark.
Absolutely. A lot of football left to be played. Gadsden County handles Jefferson County 55-0. Big shutout win for the Jags. Defensively, they're one of the tougher teams in the area. This team doesn't back down from anybody. Gave Lowndes County all they could handle earlier in the year. This is a team that's definitely in that stacked 2S class that we've been talking about. That definitely wants to make some noise come playoff time.
Yeah, absolutely. Gadsden, arguably one of the toughest schedules here in the Big Bend. Like you talked about, Lowndes and a couple other. I think they played Tift, which is also a good team north of the border up in Georgia. But yeah, hold and serve. Michael Thomas had a great game leading the charge there. They're able to snap the 2-game losing streak. He had a rushing and a pick-6 touchdown here to get 2 of those for the Jaguars, and they're looking good. Once again, that wild 2S District 3 has got to be a lot of fun down the stretch. Of course, Gadsden's going to be a key player going forward.
Absolutely. So I'm going to go ahead and take a sip from the FAMU cup here. Navarre edges Mosley 35-31 in an exciting ball game. Dolphins come out on the losing end of that one, though. Childs blanks Crestview in a big win for Coach Reagan's Bunch, 35-0 over the Bulldogs. And then Wakulla handles John Paul II with a big defensive showing, 45-0. Juba, this Wakulla is one of the most complete teams I've seen in the entire area. They have a way to be able to just actually, kind of not let teams find any kind of rhythm of any sort, offensively or defensively. They just kind of pick you apart with Hayden Cleese at the quarterback position. Got plenty of weapons all across the field. And that defensive front that they have, especially at the linebacker position, looks absolutely devastating.
Yeah, absolutely. They're all over the place. Wakulla, of course, setting the pace really not only for the Big Bend, Mark, for the whole state. One of very few 7-0 teams still out there now. They're pushing the pace. Hayden Cleese is healthy. He's slinging it. He had 3 more touchdowns this week. Also on the ground, you got to think about Jeremiah Thomas. He's a big rusher. And then also he's doing it on the defensive end as well. He had a rushing touchdown, and I think he had a takeaway interception on both ways. But man, Wakulla is a beast. They've got a system. They've been good for years, Mark. We talk about some of those other squads, and they're right there in the conversation. They're going to be another one of those fun clubs going forward. And as we talk about November football, and if they get some home games, Mark, because they do get a lot of home games, and especially
one of the toughest places to play in the state.
Absolutely. Down there in Crawfordville, they got the new turf. They packed that place out. It is one of the toughest places to play in the area. Absolutely.
Yeah, I don't know that the turf will make a difference. When I played, it was grass, but it was still a tough environment. War Eagles are rolling undefeated 7-0. Baker County, big win over Monroe, 37-13. And really for Monroe, they're still trying to figure out their team's identity. Lost quite a few players from last season's run. Still trying to put the pieces together. Rutherford snags the first win on the year, 23-9 over Arnold. Big win for the Rams. Choctaw hangs 66 on South Walton. I kind of figured that South Walton will have their hands full, but man, a 66 piece on the Seahawks definitely kind of slows their momentum a little bit as they fall to Choctaw 66-30. Port St. Joe, a big win over Vernon 39-9. And then NFC handles FAMU DRS 51-0. Eagles now finding their rhythm. Bluntstown, in a bit of a low-scoring defensive battle, handles Sneeze 7-0. And for Bluntstown, this is not really anything new. They're really a defensive-minded team, got a defensive-minded coach. Definitely hard-nosed football team, but definitely wanted to see a little bit more points put on the board. But this one right here just came down to quite a defensive battle as the Tigers handled the Pirates 7-0. And then Taylor County blanks Hamilton County 34-0. And man, probably a big emotional win for the Bulldogs as they've just been kind of in battle this season. But man, that's a great way to kind of get through the midpoint of your season with a shutout win.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, Taylor County, I feel like a lot of people were sleeping on. Mark, like you said, obviously the hardships, really the last 2 or 3 years, they've had a number of instances they've had to battle through, especially early in the season, but they're persevering. And of course, they played a tough schedule. I think people don't really look at the mark. You see a 0-4 Taylor County coming into this week, but great bounce back win for them. And man, Ryan Hamilton, Ryan with an H, Mark, is fun to watch. He's in there, dual threat quarterback. Had the opportunity to see him in person last year. I really love what he's going on. 3 total touchdowns for him. And on the defensive side, let's talk about Baylor Johnson. Mark, when is the last time you see a player have 3 interceptions? Of course, picked off Hamilton County 3 times. And then, oh, by the way, had 6 receptions, 84 yards, and a touchdown on the offensive side. Great to see Taylor County get the bounce back win here. And Taylor County is going to make things interesting here down the stretch. And of course, with the strength of schedule, obviously not as much help as straight up victories do, but it'll kind of take them a little bit here on the journey as we talk about playoff points and positioning going forward here the next 4 or 5 weeks.
Yeah, absolutely. Getting 3 INTs will definitely get you on the radar of a lot of college scouts. So big win for the Bulldogs. Swanee handle Santa Fe, and Coach Kyler Hall and company get a big win over one of their rivals, 49-7. Wewa Hitchcock, and another little eyebrow raiser for me, handles business against Liberty County, 14-7. And Gators get a really big win when they needed it the most, kind of righting the ship for their season. And Liberty, I kind of expected Liberty to kind of jump out in this one, but the Gators would not be denied as they're able to win this one by a touchdown. Cottondale hangs 70 over Franklin County, and Seahawks still looking for that first victory on the season as they fall to the Hornets 70-28. And Coach Cooper doing a lot of things to try to rebuild that Seahawk program. But man, 70 is just too much. I think they've given up close to 100 points over the past couple of games. So things hopefully will get better for the Seahawks as Cottondale, man, a big win when they needed it the most, a very embattled program. But that's one of those things that you can count on in the Panhandle is that you're going to get some shockers from week to week. Holmes County handles business against Jay 55-7, and then undefeated Bozeman takes care of business against Destin 35-9. Another undefeated team, Auxilla Christian, took care of business against Rocky Bayou as they win big 40-27. And then rounding out the scores for week number 7, Fort White downs Lafayette 35-0. And looking at a couple of these teams in the area, I try to keep an eye on some stuff, but I had to double check my phone last Friday just when the scores were coming in. It just looked like some things were quite off, but they were indeed the correct scores. So Auxilla and Bozeman undefeated on the year, and I think those teams are definitely worth checking out.
Yeah, absolutely. Peyton Gay, the quarterback, the senior over at Bozeman, is a real deal. It feels like he's tossing 3 or 4 touchdowns on a weekly basis, but he's a dual threat guy too. He also ran for a buck 40 and a touchdown over what was an undefeated Destin. And then you
Hmm.
got to love on the defensive side, and of course the running backs, Chance Jenkins. He's been putting up, it seems, 200 all-purpose yards and getting it done on the defensive end. And then for Alcilla, this is probably their toughest test to date, you would think, here going against Rocky Bayou, but they withstood the test. Osceola going into 5-0, looking good as they hit the halfway point through their regular season, Mark.
Yeah, love the offensive line at Bozeman. These guys are big, they're physical, they can move. I've seen them on a couple of plays, watching some film, doing some run blocking, especially keeping up with a mobile quarterback. You got to have a good offensive line if you're going to keep your quarterback healthy. And then Osceola Christian, Coach Colby Roberts, puts together a great game plan. I've watched some of the stuff he's dialed up. They look like a really good ball club going into the latter part of the season. Definitely going to have my eyes on them. So that'll do it for the week number 7 rewind. Definitely looking forward to what week number 8 will bring on the slate later on as we get to the latter part. I think we've got 3 or 4 weeks left in the regular season as things are slowly starting to creep into October. It's football weather, great time to get out and catch some games. But that'll do it for week number 7. So for 4 Quarters Online, I'm Mark Adams, and my tag team partner for today, Andrew Jupe. We'll catch everybody next week.